Okay, we welcome everyone to the Middleburg Mission Health Line. So we always start, our program here is basically to teach people about the benefits of a plant-based diet. And so we welcome everyone because we know that in these days of coronavirus and all the things that are happening, we need to share how people can feel better. And today's program is especially important because we are talking to a wonderful person. We're going to let him tell you about himself. Dr. ESSELSTYN, he's done wonders for the plant-based world. I am especially impressed with Dr. ESSELSTYN because he has a wonderful family, and it seems like they're all involved in this plant-based diet. So that is a wonder, because I know with my mom and I, sometimes other family members, they don't accept this diet as much, but we want to talk about the benefits of how it can help in the realm of heart disease. So we always start our prayer, our program with a quick word of prayer. So we will do that. And I always start with the perfect prayer. It is, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So again, we welcome everyone, and especially welcome Dr. Caldwell ESSELSTYN and his wife, because I think I saw her there. Are you guys still here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. So welcome. We are wanting to know, I guess, more about plant-based and how that affects the heart. So you can probably start out by telling us a little bit about your family and what you've done over the last few years. And you look wonderful, I must say. I hope that when I get to your age, that God will bless me to look just as good.
Oh, Royna, let me just say that I'm pleased, proud, and delighted to be with your program this evening. A little bit of background of what I got involved with. I went to medical school out at Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. And after that, I took my residency training at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. That was in training in general surgery. After I finished my training, I was a year at Fort Bragg in the Army. And then the next year I was as a combat surgeon in Vietnam in 1968. Then when I came back, I was offered a position in the Department of General Surgery at the Cleveland Clinic, which I was happy to be. And I then became chairman of our breast cancer task force. And it was in the late 1970s that I began to get somehow increasingly disillusioned with the fact that for no matter how many women I was doing breast surgery, I was doing absolutely nothing for the next unsuspecting victim, which led me to do a bit of global research. And it was quite apparent that there were multiple cultures where breast cancer rates were 30 and 40 times less frequent than the United States, for instance, in Kenya. But then you looked at rural Japan in the 1950s, breast cancer was very infrequently identified. And yet, as soon as the Japanese women would migrate to the United States by the second and third generation, they now had the same rate of breast cancer as their Caucasian counterpart. And perhaps even more powerful was when you looked at in the entire nation of Japan in 1958, how many autopsy-proven deaths were there from cancer of the prostate? 18 in the entire nation, which was the most mind-boggling public health figure I think I've ever encountered. Yet by 1978, 20 years later, they were now, it was interesting, they're up to 137, which still pales in comparison to the 28,000 men who will die this year in this country from prostate cancer. So it was along about this time that I began to encounter frequently, there were cultures where cardiovascular disease was virtually non-existent. And that really caught my attention. And I thought to myself, well, if the leading killer of women and men in Western civilization is cardiovascular disease, if we could somehow get patients to change the way they were eating and eliminate cardiovascular disease, at the same time, we would likely diminish the likelihood of their having breast, prostate, colon, or pancreatic cancer. We're at the point there where I said, well, it's one thing to have that opinion, but you've got to do research. So the first small study, since I was really actively involved as a general surgeon, my time was limited, but therefore I was able to persuade the Department of Cardiology at the Cleveland Clinic to provide me with 24 patients who were seriously ill with cardiovascular disease. They had either failed their first or second bypass, they had failed their first or second angioplasty, or they were too sick for these procedures, or they had refused. And it was really quite striking that we began to see not only that we could stop the progression of cardiovascular disease, but we often saw striking examples of reversal. So that motivated me to initiate what I called the first national conference on the prevention and elimination of cardiovascular disease, because with all due respect to my cardiovascular colleagues, it was quite striking that there was something that was astray here, because when you think about it, how would your audience react if I told them that for the last 90 years, we have known that there are many cultures where cardiovascular disease is non-existent? And how would your audience react if I told them that in today's world, none of the pills, none of the drugs, none of the stents, and none of the bypass surgeries have one single solitary thing to do with the causation of the illness?
Wow.
So what we were really doing was we were treating the causation of the illness, and that is really the absolute key. And I'll stop now if you wanted to ask me another question.
Well, what you said is so interesting, because what countries were represented as having no cardiovascular disease?
Well, for instance, if you were to go to Okinawa and set up a cardiovascular surgery practice, forget it. You better plan on selling pencils. Or if you go to rural China or Central Africa, or the Tarahumara Indians in northern Mexico, or the Papua Highlanders in New Guinea, no cardiovascular disease. Why? Because they thrive on whole food, plant-based nutrition without oil. That was the key that got me going into this research.
But I mean, you're talking about something. Are they actually? I don't remember seeing Mexico, northern Mexico, represented in the blue zones. Or was that one country that was represented?
No, it was not in the blue zone. But the blue zones didn't get all the spots. The blue zones didn't get the Papua Highlanders. The blue zones did not get the Tarahumara Indians. Right, but that's all right. They got some very important places.
Wow. And so I wanted to ask you something. So I do love what you're doing, but something that is not in the realm of what you're doing is what I mentioned earlier. How did you get your entire family involved in the ESSELSTYN plant-based diet?
Well, actually, I never could have done any of the research without the support of my wife. And Anne was wonderful. And when she saw this commitment, because I should give you a little bit of background there. When I knew I had to do this research back in 1980, 82, 83, I kept putting it off because I was a cholesterolholic myself. I grew up in a family that I lived on an Aberdeen Angus beef farm and a dairy farm.
Wow.
And it was pretty hard for me to reject and think that all the products that we were producing on that farm were killing people.
Mm.
And that was a big step. But and my dad had his first heart attack when he was 43. Well, the thing that got the rest of the family into it was after I started this and we began to suddenly get these results, the family began to say, look, how are we any different than your dad or anybody else? And so, I think the greatest gift that we gave our kids was to eat plant-based. And we now have 10 grandchildren and 4 children, and all of them are totally plant-based. And right from the day they were born, they were plant-based. Before I escape, I really want to share with your audience, if I can, what really is the causation of cardiovascular disease, because it's the leading killer in everybody, men and women in the United States. And it's especially aggressive in some of our less fortunate persons. Now, the area where all experts would agree is the following. Where this disease has its inception, its onset, its beginning, is when we progressively injure the life jacket and the guardian of our blood vessels, which happens to be that delicate innermost lining, which has a name, the endothelium, endothelium. Now, the endothelium makes an absolutely remarkable molecule of gas, nitric oxide. And it is nitric oxide, which is the great salvation and protector of all of our blood vessels because of the remarkable functions that nitric oxide has. For example, nitric oxide will keep all the cellular elements within our bloodstream flowing smoothly like Teflon rather than Velcro. It keeps things from getting sticky. Number 2, nitric oxide is the strongest blood vessel dilator in the body. When you climb stairs, the arteries to your heart, the arteries to your legs, they widen, they dilate. That's nitric oxide. Number 3, nitric oxide will protect the wall of the artery from becoming thickened, stiff, or inflamed, and thus will protect us from hypertension. 33% of people in this country have hypertension. Because what? Because they've run out of nitric oxide and their blood vessels are getting stiff, thick, and inflamed. Number 4, now here's the absolute key. A safe and normal amount of nitric oxide will protect us all from ever developing blockages or plaque. However, everybody on the planet Earth who has cardiovascular disease has their disease because by now, in the previous decades, they have so sufficiently trashed, injured, compromised, and turned their endothelial system into a train wreck that they no longer have enough nitric oxide left to protect themselves from making blockages and plaque. But the good news is this is not a malignancy. This is a completely benign foodborne illness. And once you can get a patient to understand that never, never, never again are they to pass a single morsel through their lips that is going to further injure an already train-wrecked endothelium, because then the endothelium will recover, make enough nitric oxide, so you halt disease progression, and we all often will see elements of disease reversal. I'll give you a break to ask a question, and I got some more. There's more to this. Go ahead.
Okay, good. So I know what's going to be next. First, there's a Dr. Sharon on the line, and she wanted to know, how did your colleagues react to your findings? So we're actually going back just a little bit.
The fact that we could reverse heart disease? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it was very interesting. You had it was very exciting. I thought we really had something that was so powerful and so exciting that here we not only could stop disease, but we could reverse it.
Mhm.
But people are always down on what they are not up on. This was something that was totally strange to physicians. They immediately jumped on the fact that they thought maybe this diet is too strict, severe, and extreme. This diet is the same one that millions of people in cultures where there is not cardiovascular disease enjoy and have for hundreds of years. But when a physician is confronted with something for which he is ill-equipped to deal with or is unfamiliar with it, they often reject it. So we had lots of arguments that, the study was small, it wasn't randomized, and the diet was so strict that Dr. ESSELSTYN, what makes you think you could ever repeat this with a larger group and get similar results? So I'd like to answer that question by telling that doctor who called in for a question that we later did a study, this time with 200 patients. And I'm going to tell you about that shortly. But first, I want to come back, so before I lose my train of thought, on the question was, therefore, what are the foods that every time they pass your lips, you injure the endothelial cells? They are: 1, any drop of oil, olive oil, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, coconut oil, palm oil, oil in a cracker, oil in a piece of bread, oil in a salad dressing. Oil injures the endothelial lining, as does anything with a mother or a face: meat, fish, chicken, fowl, turkey, and eggs, and anything that is dairy: milk, cream, butter, cheese, ice cream, and yogurt, and sugary drinks, Diet Colas, Pepsi, and Coke, and sugary foods: cakes, pies, cookies, stevia, agave, excesses of maple syrup, molasses, and honey. And for my patients with heart disease, I do not want them to have nuts, peanut butter, nut butters, cashew sauce, or avocado. And no coffee with caffeine. Decaf, yes. Coffee with caffeine, no. All right. Now, what are they going to
That's a long list.
It's important.
But no apricots.
Every one of our patients is going to eat on this diet foods that they've had all their life. What we are asking them not to eat are the foods that every time they have it, it injures their endothelial cells. So now the next thing is, what are you going to eat? You're going to eat all these marvelous whole grains, WHOLE, whole grains: bulgur wheat, barley, rye, buckwheat, farro, quinoa, and so forth. For your cereal bread, for your pasta, bread, rolls, and bagels, and 101 different types of legumes and lentils and beans, all these marvelous red, yellow, and green leafy vegetables, white potatoes, sweet potatoes, and some fruit. And they're now wonderful books with hundreds of recipes that follow this. So you've got a delicious treasure chest of food recipes for this type of eating. Now, there is one other thing that I think is so important to mention at this time. By now, your audience hopefully knows that it's the endothelial production of nitric oxide which is protecting your blood vessels. Now, it's almost as if you think maybe nature forgot about us, because as we get older, the amount of nitric oxide, even in somebody who's beautifully healthy, that you produce is less. For example, somebody who's age 50, they're beautifully healthy, they're now making 50% of the nitric oxide they made when they were age 25.
Oh, no.
When you get to be over 80, you're making 73% less. Well, now the good news though is this: you can re-stimulate that endothelium to some extent, and I'm going to show your audience now how to take advantage of a system where we can make more nitric oxide. And that is this. If you could take a patient with heart disease and get them to imagine that they could shrink their head to a size that it could crawl inside the artery and see the blockage. they would see that the blockage is an absolute cauldron of oxidative inflammation. So we need antioxidants, but do not go down to the health food store and buy a jug of pills because it doesn't work. It's going to be harmful. I need you to get your antioxidants from food. Fair enough. What food? Food that is high in what we call ORAC value. ORAC, oxygen radical absorptive capacity. So this means that if you're having raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries on your morning oat cereal, that's a terrific start. However, nothing can trump the antioxidant value of green leafy vegetables. So I need you to chew 6, if you're a heart patient, 6 times a day. To chew, not smoothies, not juicing. To chew a green leafy vegetable that's approximately the size of your, 3/4 the size of your fist after it has first been boiled in water or steamed 5.5 to 6 minutes so it's nice and tender. Then you must then anoint it with several drops of a delightful either balsamic or rice vinegar. Why? Because the acetic acid in the vinegar has been shown to restore the nitric oxide synthase enzyme, which is contained within the endothelial cell that is responsible for making nitric oxide. So you're going to chew this alongside your breakfast cereal, again as a mid-morning snack, again with your lunch and sandwich, that's 3, mid-afternoon 4, dinner time 5, and of course I adore it when you have that evening snack of kale. Now, the second thing that comes from chewing the green leafy vegetables, you restore the capacity of your bone marrow to make the endothelial progenitor cell. What do? They replace our senescent, injured, worn out endothelial cells. Now, here's the third thing that chewing the greens does, and this is vital, so important. When you are chewing a green, you are chewing a nitrate. As you chew this nitrate, it is going to mix with the facultative anaerobic bacteria that reside in the crypts and grooves of your tongue. Those bacteria are going to reduce the nitrates that you are chewing to nitrites. Now, when you swallow the nitrites, it is your own gastric acid, which is going to further reduce the nitrites to more nitric oxide. So here's what you are. All day long, you are from dawn to dusk, you are absolutely restoring for these patients nitric oxide, the very molecule, the deficiency of which has given them this disease in the first place. Pretty powerful and exciting stuff to think. We're not asking you to have this as a drug because there's no added expense and there's no horrible side effect. Now, there are a couple of caveats here, though, and that is you cannot use toothpaste with fluoride or mouthwash because they will destroy the beneficial bacteria in your mouth. And you cannot use antacids because antacids will reduce your gastric acid, so it will not be strong enough to reduce the nitrites to more nitric oxide. Now, you're probably asking or wondering, what are the greens that Dr. ESSELSTYN is talking about? They are, ready? Bok choy, Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard green, turnip greens, Napa cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, cilantro, parsley, spinach, and arugula and asparagus. And the top 5 are kale, Swiss chard, spinach, arugula, and beet greens. And look what it does for your memory.
Yes. Well, you're a living example. So I'm sorry, my other friend is going to come on right now, but I wanted to ask you, what about oxalic acid, for your kidneys?
What about?
The acid that forms in the kidneys when you eat too many greens? Are
you talking about, no. We've not seen that. We've not seen that be a problem.
No. Okay. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All righty. So you're chewing these greens. You don't have to have a whole bowl of them. It's just chew small portions.
Right. You're about half to 3/4 the size of your fist after it has first been boiled in water. Yeah.
Okay. And you didn't mention cabbage at all.
No, cabbage is fine.
Cabbage is fine. Okay, Nicole, are you there?
I'm
Hi,
here.
Nicole.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Dr. ESSELSTYN. How are you? Thank you so much for this information. It's been very interesting. You mentioned a number of different vegetables, which, I mean, as a person who follows a whole food plant-based diet myself, like, you know, they excite me. Kale, collards, all of those things. But when you talk about different communities, oftentimes you have a lot of people who struggle to get those things into their diet. Have you seen that in some of the patients that you've worked with? And in what sense, you know, in that case, how do you kind of go about encouraging and promoting people to make that shift? Because I know it can be a big struggle for some, especially if they don't have a knowledge of those food items.
Nicole, I think you make a wonderful point, because what you're asking is, how are we able to achieve adherence to a significant lifestyle change?
Exactly.
Yeah, and we've addressed that. There are two different techniques that we've used, both of which seem to have been successful. In the first group that I had of these 24 patients, I was so apprehensive about whether or not they would adhere, because this was an enormously significant change, even though they had significant heart disease. And I decided that I would use for them the same mantra that I had used for my cancer patients, which was a mantra that I had learned years ago from a wonderful West Coast surgeon by the name of Bert Dunphy. And Bert said that patients with cancer are not afraid to suffer. Patients with cancer are not afraid to die. But patients with cancer are afraid of being abandoned by their physician or by their family. So for that first study, I saw every one of these patients every 2 weeks in the office, went over every morsel they had eaten. We checked their blood pressure and their weight and their cholesterol. At the end of 5 years, I got a little bit more courageous, and I stretched out the visits to twice a month. And by that time, once a month. Most cardiologists will see their patients twice a year. Now, by the end of 10 years, by the end of a decade, they were really pretty well now on autopilot. And it was by the 12th year that I wrote that group up in a peer-reviewed medical journal called the American Journal of Family Practice. And it was really kind of exciting to have the imprimatur of having a scientific presentation on our experience be published. Now, there's another technique for getting patients to adhere that we think is also very important. And that is that for the last decade or so, once a month, I would hold an intensive counseling seminar for usually no more than about 16 patients, again, seriously ill with cardiovascular disease. But they were coming from throughout Canada, throughout the United States, and some from overseas. Now, the burden was on me to get these people to adhere. And so it was a one-day, 6-hour presentation. During that presentation, they were going to learn all about how they had created the disease. They're learning all about their endothelium. They're learning all about the importance of nitric oxide. Then we have a wonderful opportunity to have them have in front of them notebooks which contain a copy of every PowerPoint slide that I was using. We then also had an hour and a half in that group where a wonderful woman with 30 years experience would share her knowledge of plant food acquisition, preparation, and what to deal with travel and restaurant. Then everybody receives a DVD of the entire seminar, and we then have usually a presentation from a marvelous a patient who has previously had a successful experience, so that those in attendance are able to say, look, if he or she can do this, I can do this. And then we gave them a wonderful plant-based luncheon. So, and the other thing that I think was very important was that 2 weeks beforehand, my secretary would give me a list of everybody who was coming to the seminar. And since I'm a little bit old-fashioned, I called myself every one of those patients so that I could have an opportunity to get my arms around their story and permit them an opportunity to ask questions of me, so that coming to the seminar 2 weeks later, we would have a strong platform from which we can all move forward. And the thing that I think really absolutely seals the deal is the education that these patients receive about the endothelial cell and the endothelial lining. Once they get it in their head that the endothelial cells make nitric oxide, which is the molecule of gas that saves us all, why would anybody, after having heard that for over several hours, anybody with a brain in their head would say, well, Dr. ESSELSTYN, gee, that was very interesting, but Lois and I are going to have our 35th wedding anniversary in a week or two, and boy, am I going to destroy my few remaining endothelial cells. What? Not going to happen. So that's the best I can do for you, Nicole, but it seems to work, because in that subsequent study that we had of the 200 patients, when we found the adherence rate was 89.3, almost 90%.
Wow.
I'd like it to be even better, but I think those are the secrets. And it also helps if you have a loud voice and you got gray hair and you're 6'3".
That doesn't hurt. No, I think that's so interesting. And what I'm hearing you say, to kind of condense it down, juice it a little bit, is basically building community around the conversation, and the intentionality in terms of the way that you're connecting with your patients. And then that education piece is huge. People actually understanding what's happening inside the body, and how every bite is literally having an impact on what they're doing.
Give them the science in terminology that they can understand.
Yeah. Now, how does that translate for, if you're looking across, different cultures, people maybe like where there's language barriers, or, different levels of education and understanding? Have you come across, difficulties or obstacles in conveying that information to different people groups?
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. But because I don't really speak much other than English, but we have had a number of patients, if they come in to our seminar, they can't speak. They often we will try to supply them an interpreter, or they bring their own interpreter. But it's the message is the same. I don't care what the language is, as long as they can understand about the endothelium and nitric oxide and what is plant-based, and if they have a grasp of the foods that every time they pass their lips, they injure the endothelium, then we're really making some headway.
Yeah. And then, of course, you said you provide a nice plant-based lunch. And as a restaurant owner, I think there's never any harm in sharing food. Well, sitting down to a meal speaks volumes, for sure. Yeah. Very interesting. So I guess the other point that I wanted to touch on was, I guess, supplements. So a lot of people who are looking at, a plant, a change in their lifestyle, a change in the way that they eat to support health, oftentimes think that they need to take some additional supplements or perhaps herbal therapies to help kind of assist, because they're afraid of being deficient in, other items, other nutrients, other minerals. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. But what you do is you immediately, when I do to try to reassure them. Well, first of all, I do like them to take B12. Vitamin B12 for plant-based nutrition. I do like them to take B12. Yes. Now, how many supplements do you suppose the longest lived people on the planet, the Japanese in Okinawa, how many supplements do you think they take?
0.
Yeah. How about rural China? How about Central Africa? How about the Papua Highlanders in New Guinea? They don't. No, I don't. Other than B12, I do not push supplements. Now, if you want to look at omega-3, patients can always have it checked, the blood test. If it's low, because usually we try to ask patients to take a lot of flaxseed meal or chia seeds or lots of green leafy vegetables, which keeps them in an adequate level of omega-3. But if they are low, you can get what is called an omega check, and the omega check will tell you whether your blood level is optimal, modest, or low. And you can always supplement with an omega-3 algae supplement.
Algae?
Algae.
When you say algae,
omega-3
like
algae supplement. That way you kind of avoid the fish oil.
okay, so you're talking about things like kelp, bladderwrack. Are those the things that you're saying, or just plain sea vegetables?
Of omega-3 algae.
Okay, all righty. Well, Nicole, are you there? Is that your last question?
Sure. I was just checking the chat room. We had one other question that I think is a really very practical question that comes up, and that's other than changing jobs, which isn't obviously an option for a lot of people, what other things can people who work night shifts or who are working overnight, what are other things that they can do to protect their health?
Well, if they can, I think that the thing that they're going to miss is probably adequate sleep, and sleep is very important. But they should be able to still. I can't see why working the night shift would prevent you from eating a plant-based meal. Am I missing something here?
Well, I guess they feel that working nights is going to cause them not to get the melatonin, serotonin, whatever that they get at nighttime.
Well, no, I no argument. I mean, no, shift work is basically unhealthy.
Right.
Right. No argument there, but those are the facts of life. Yeah. You have to do the very best you can.
And what about the disparities in heart disease as far as race is concerned? Because I know that in the African American community, it's pretty high. And so how do you reach those communities that are basically stuck on culture? It's very, very hard.
First of all, I think that the African American community should not feel that nature has singled them out for heart disease, because for instance, I'm aware of some of the data over in Central Africa where maybe 1 or 2 heart attacks in an entire nation. The one that begins with G, I can't think of it right now. Oh, anyway.
Is that Ghana?
Yes,
Ghana?
It was okay. Wrong. There was absolutely no heart disease because what? Because they're eating this way. But now in this country, the African American community, I think unfairly, often they have a sort of a food desert, and the only available food often in their neighborhoods are those that are fast foods, which are absolutely the death knell for prostate cancer, hypertension, obesity, and strokes. I mean, it's truly quite tragic. Now, what I tried to do was to try to get an opportunity in Cleveland to speak to the African American community at I had a church that I was invited to speak at. Actually, 2 separate years, and when I was asked the third time, I said I would be more than willing to do this if you will promise me that you'll find me 2 or 3 other African American churches where I can share this message. And sadly, there was some politics in that African American community, and it never quite happened. So I always have felt that the way to really reach it is through the women and through the churches, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Okay, and what about as far as your environment? Are there any environmental factors as far as if we live in the cities, you know, your family health, you know, because of course you have your whole family surrounding you and supporting you, but how does that affect us in the realm of
positive social relationships are just an absolute marvelous key to health. I mean, the advantages of the support, and often with families are close, there's a lot of humor, and humor can be absolutely delightful from a health standpoint. Laughter is do
it good like a medicine. Do you know that?
It's the best medicine.
Yes.
Yeah, without question.
Okay. And your wife is there also. Will she come on, or she won't?
You want Ann to come on?
Yes, Mrs. Ann.
Geez, Ann, they're desperate for you. They're tired of me. Come on.
Okay.
She's very bashful.
Okay.
I'm only kidding. She's not bashful.
Hi.
There she is.
Hello, Mrs. Ann. You know, I appreciate you so much because you are not just the guard, you are the caretaker of his diet and everything else. You are really responsible for keeping us, well, all the families healthy as far as being the mom and the wife. And so can you share with us something that you've done over the years? It doesn't even have to be food that has helped in the, as far as keeping the plant-based diet lifestyle.
I think the most important thing is just to make it simple. And you know, our favorite food is rice and beans, brown rice, beans from scratch. Yeah. It doesn't have to be expensive and it doesn't have to be fancy. You know, sweet
lasagna,
pasta. And you know, the key thing is when you're making pasta, put in a whole ton of frozen vegetables, put in some kale and collards, and cook it along with the pasta. So you have a great meal of vegetables with the pasta. And then, you know, I make pasta sauce when there are summer tomatoes, but put pasta sauce on, you have a wonderful meal. I mean, I just don't think, you know, it has to be complicated or fancy to be good. I understand you must be a great cook because haven't you run restaurants?
Oh, I did. Yes. But I can't compare to you guys. I'm only 50. You guys you're beating me. So I got to catch up. I got to do marathons like you all. But there's a lady on the line, and I have to give her credit. I mean, I've been in the plant-based diet for, well, not plant-based completely. I was vegetarian for about 40 years. So, and there's a lady that was instrumental, and that's why I believe that family is so important. And her name is Janet Holmes. And I would love for you guys to meet her because she has helped tons of people with cancer and heart disease. And are you there? Aunt Janet, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
We can't see you.
I don't know why.
Uh-oh, because your video is off, Aunt Janet.
Okay.
But say hello to Dr. ESSELSTYN.
Hey, Janet.
Hi, Janet.
Hi.
Tell them about your plant-based living and how you've been instrumental in helping hundreds, thousands of people through the years.
Well, basically, I think I was about 28 or 29 years old when I started to change my diet. And I was a meat eater. And basically, I stopped eating meat and I turned to vegetables and fruit. And what I did was I eat my vegetables for my dinner, and I refused to eat anything that was refined. So I did not eat white bread and anything that was refined. I ate everything that was whole. So I would eat wheat bread and grains, alfalfa, grains, and lots of vegetables and lots of salad. So I would have my heavy meals earlier in the day so that my body is able to digest everything, and I would take walks after I finish eating. And in the evening, and not too late, between 3 and no later than 5, I would have what you call my supper. And my supper would consist of fruits and cereal, because I'm eating heavy in the earlier part of the day and light in the evening, so I'm able to go to bed and have my food, not heavy food on my stomach. No problem with digestion and all of that. And over the years, I has remained very healthy, and I am now 71 years old. And I go to the doctor and they say, boy, what are you doing? Because you don't have diabetes, you don't have high blood pressure, you have no lung problems, and you look very, very healthy. You look very young. So, you need to share with us what are you doing to keep yourself looking like that? And I just let them know that I have changed my diet many years ago, and I'm eating, plant-based. I'm on a plant-based diet and a fruit diet in the evening. Or I would drink a smoothie, something like that, with fruits and grapefruits, and I would blend it with blueberries. And I don't eat mango because I was raised eating mango all my life. And when I came to America, I stopped eating mango. I was like, I had enough of that.
I love mangoes.
Mangoes is good. It's okay. I happen not to eat mangoes anymore because I ate mangoes all my life growing up. My dad had mango trees and all of these things. And when I came to America, the mango didn't taste the same way our mango tastes at home. And so basically I said, well, that's something I don't have to eat. And I have not eaten mango since I've been here.
Wow.
Well, you're an inspiration.
Yes.
What you said?
Thank you so much, Aunt Janet. Thank you. What we want to do is actually get to the people that are listening in, and to get their questions. Nicole, are you able to see their questions?
May I make one comment while you're getting the questions?
Yes, yes.
One of the things that might be of interest, we use no oil, and
yes,
like cooking an onion with no oil is just so easy because the onion is filled with water and it doesn't need oil. But our daughter Jane has started a YouTube channel called Jane ESSELSTYN.
Okay.
And it's very short, little things like how to cook an onion without oil, and sort of easy things like that. So
okay. And how do you do that without the Teflon pots?
Yeah, and it works in any pot.
Okay.
Onions are filled, you might put little bits of water or vegetable broth or whatever in any liquid. If you need it, but you just don't need oil.
Okay. All right. So Nicole, are you there? I can't see the questions as good as you guys. Okay. So someone shared your daughter's YouTube channel. They're so quick. Thank you, Fran. Are there questions there? Nicole, are you there? Okay.
I'm here. I'm looking through, but I think we've actually had everything answered. Does anybody else have any other questions? Oh, so I don't know if we touched on this, but someone asked whether, this is going back a bit, but whether lemon juice would work as well as vinegar in terms of the acidity with the greens.
No, the reason I mentioned the rice vinegar or the balsamic vinegar, that was the one that was done with research. So I know that those are the ones that work. I've seen that done with lemon, but I have some doubts whether there is enough acetic acid in the lemon, although I don't know this to work or not. But I would think it would be pretty easy to use either rice vinegar or balsamic to restore the capacity of the nitric oxide synthase enzyme to once again make more nitric oxide.
Okay. And so Nicole, we're looking for one person. I'm not sure if Dr. Walsh is here. He wanted to say a few words. Do you see him?
Let's see.
Dr. Walsh, if you're here, can you just raise your hand? Okay.
I don't see him here.
Okay, that's okay. All right, go ahead, Nicole. Sorry.
Someone also asked, can you tell us about Plant Stock 2020?
That's going to be done virtually. And if you go to Plant Stock, you can get all the information. And one of the nice things about it is that it's going to have just so many interesting cooking demos, and there are all different price ranges. And if people need to go, they have some where it's complimentary. So it's a really nice opportunity.
Give me the dates.
It's August 14 and 15 and 16.
Okay. All righty. So someone loaded that in the chat room. It's plantstock2020.com.
Yes.
So I think everyone can see that. Dr. Esselstyn,
That's
do you have
a wonderful chance to get just get lots of exposure to many different people and all plant-based, and to get really excited.
Okay. And what about exercise? You guys didn't touch on exercise. What do you guys do for exercise? Did you tell us your ages? I don't know if that's appropriate to ask, but
well, Anne,
I'm 84.
oh no, that's impossible.
We got wood chips, and I've just loaded 6 wheelbarrows full of those to move them. I have to move them from the driveway.
Anne is in constant motion. Sometimes she goes off for a little run. Tonight but after she ran, she went for a swim. I am a little bit more partial to the bicycle, and on this road where the traffic is really very limited, I often will get a nice bicycle workout from that standpoint. And then every other day I do try to do some resistance training, some weights. But I would suggest that if you haven't seen it yet, there are 2 films that you would find interesting. One is Forks Over Knives, and the other is The Game Changers. The game,
okay.
Wonderful, yeah.
Wow. So of course we've seen Forks Over Knives. I don't think I've seen The Game Changers, but is that one that Rip put out, your son?
Yes.
Well, no.
He was an assistant producer, but it was.
He's in it.
Yeah.
He's in it.
So is the strongest man in the world, a German by the name of Babudian, who is totally plant-based.
Okay. Wow.
Nice.
Well, are you guys familiar with Dr. Nedley, Dr. Neil Nedley?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we come from, well, I come from, I don't know who's on the line, but I come from a wonderful community of people. We're Seventh-day Adventists. So we believe, well, I would say we're probably at 50-50 right now. So I'm not sure who believes, but I believe in the plant-based diet. So you guys are inspirational to us. And we thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. Dr. Esselstyn, is there anything else that you want to share with us
Yes.
to give us a great
Yes.
warning?
I would like to share I guess you might say, why is it that I am so passionate about medicine now, even though it's 21 years since I retired from surgery? And the reason is that I see in front of us what could really become the seismic revolution in health. And that seismic revolution in health is only going to come about when we in the profession have the will and the grit and the determination to share with the public what is the lifestyle, and most specifically, what is the nutritional literacy that will empower them as the locus of control to halt and annihilate chronic illness. Thank you, Rowena.
Thank you, guys.
Rena,
Yes, I'm
Rena,
here.
Rena,
Yes. Thank you all. You all are the best. I thank you so much. I wish that I was there. I'd give you great big hugs because you're now part of the family.
not anymore.
Yes.
All right, we can't do that. I'm sorry. So ear hugs. We'll give ear hugs. But yes.
I understand that you were talking about oil.
Oil. Yes, no oil. Go ahead.
Oil should not. We should really be very careful of using oil, frying oil, because it causes a lot of challenges in our body. So the best way to do what I use is olive oil, very light. And the best way to do is saute, put a little water and saute instead of heating it and let it burn. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I don't use butter. And I try to stay away with what was said earlier, stir frying onions and tomatoes with water.
Okay.
And actually, you don't need oil, any kind of oil, for anything once you've tried it. It's amazing. It just is amazing. And the worst oil is coconut. Never use that. It's 90% saturated fat. So avoid that.
So how come now you guys have just opened up a whole can of worms, because the whole community of plant-based followers are saying we need coconut oil for the brain. She said no.
That's not a community that, I mean, I'm a member of, I know most of the people in that community, but I know none of them who are pushing coconut oil. Absolutely not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So no coconut oil. All right.
Oil.
No oil. But can we eat coconuts?
Just know that there's lots of saturated fat in coconut.
But what about the countries that are eating a lot of coconuts?
The cool thing, if you love coconut milk, you can take a teaspoon of coconut extract and a cup of alternative milk, and you get coconut milk without all the saturated fat, and it's good.
Okay. So basically, you're just telling us to stay away from refined foods. I know in the 70s, we used to have brown rice and it had a lot of bran on it. I don't know what they do with the brown rice now, but that bran back then would cut you. So I don't see that much on the rice right now.
No, you can get short grain, long grain, black, red, all kinds of rice. That's great. That's whole grain.
Okay.
You're not from the south of the parsnip.
Okay. So what nuts do you guys recommend? Because you don't recommend any nuts, basically. Are there any?
No nuts for his heart patients.
Oh, not
But
just heart
nuts
patients.
are all right if you don't have heart
If you
disease.
don't have
And
heart disease.
walnuts are the very best
Yeah.
for their omega-3.
Well, once they have heart disease, I ask them to forgo the nuts because it's too much saturated fat.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. Did I miss any questions, Nicole? You guys have to go and visit Nicole's restaurant too when you're up in the Northeast.
Where is it?
We're in Worcester.
Where?
Worcester, Massachusetts.
Oh,
Yeah, and we have a location in Clinton as well. So we'd love to feed you. Feel free to stop by.
Thank you.
Yes, and no oil. So we've got you covered.
Send me the information on her restaurant so we can pass it on to friends who live near there.
Sure, we sure can. And okay, I did say I was gonna let you go, but are you guys like in a, because Dr. ESSELSTYN, aren't you from New York City?
Well, no,
Yeah, you were born in
hello,
Yes. Yeah, go.
you still there?
Just keep going.
I am. There was a little background noise.
I was born in New York City, but the family had a farm where I grew up, and that's in about 110 miles north of New York City on the eastern side of the Hudson River, which is actually, we still visit the farm once a year.
Mhm.
Other than that, I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, so your last, that's wonderful. So are you in the country in Cleveland, Ohio?
Well, we're in a nice suburb.
Okay, good. Because I wanted to ask the last question, because gardening and, that all helps as far as, our lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle.
This woman
So,
has the best green thumb and the most wonderful garden here you can imagine.
wow, nice. What are you growing?
Collards, kale, Swiss chard,
Yes.
beets, a little arugula, cabbage, tons of tomatoes, basil, arugula, marjoram, parsley, good things.
Wow, wonderful things. Yeah, we're trying, but we're so much in the heat that we're getting a lot of challenges with the bugs.
Where are you?
And cucumbers. Are you in Florida?
Yeah, in Florida. Yeah, but we have everything growing. Everything.
Florida. Stay safe. Wear a mask.
Oh, thank you.
All mad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Florida's and
Devastated.
having tough times now.
Yeah.
Well, they are. But we have the sun with us. Isn't that wonderful? So, okay, thank you all. We're gonna close with prayer. Victor, are you there?
He's with the babies.
Oh, he's with the babies.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So, Nicole, can you offer a closing prayer for us?
Sure. All right. Father in heaven, Lord, we just thank you so much, Lord, for the time that you've allowed us to have to gather, to discuss the principles that we know that you've laid before us in terms of eating and health and the things that you desire, that we prosper and be in good health, just as our soul prospers, Lord. And we thank you for that. Father, we thank you for the time that you've given us through Dr. ESSELSTYN and his wife, for the information that they've been able to share with our community here, Lord. And we just pray and ask that you continue to bless them in their work as they go forward, healing and sharing information with those who are sick and in need of diet change, lifestyle change, Lord. Let them be an encouragement to those that they come in contact with and a source of information. Father, we pray for all of those that are on the call, that they've learned something, gleaned something that will be a help and a benefit to them or someone in their community. Let us just be transformed inside and out by this information that you shared, and realize that it is your desire that we all be in good health, that we all achieve and feel well, Lord, that we be blessed not only in the physical, but in the emotional, relational, and spiritual as well, Lord, and that your health principles are just one aspect of that. And so, Father, we thank you for that blessing, and we thank you that we've been able to spend this time to share in that. Father, we thank you as the Sabbath hours are coming to a close for the Sabbath, for the blessing of the Sabbath, and that we've been able to just again share in community, although we are far apart, that we were able to share in community together. Thank you for that, Lord, and thank you for all those that have joined on the call. Continue to be with them, keep them, and bless them until we all meet again. This is our prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.